Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I'm coming to you with the books that I read in the latter half of June. The first book I'm going to talk about, I am not actually going to say what it is because it's a Wednesday Books title, and we are still boycotting them. It is already June, and we are still boycotting Wednesday Books. They have not met our demands, our very, very reasonable demands. So if you would like to read more about the influencer boycott, I will leave a link down below in the description. And if anyone from Wednesday Books or St. Martin's Press happens to be watching this, please meet our demands. Your silence on the issue is not doing what you think it's doing at all, and we would all really like to just get back to talking about books. So anyway, on to the books that I will be mentioning in this video. So firstly, we have A Princess of Landover by Terry Brooks. This is about a princess who has to get away from a bunch of bad guys and fix a library and follow a magical cat somewhere and all this other stuff, and this was really good. This is part of a series, but it's kind of like a companion series, and this is actually the first one I've read. I have not read the previous books in the series at all, and I think this is literally like the 6th or 8th one or something like that, so I'm sure I was missing some stuff, but you can technically read these in any order, so I have no idea. But anyway, I definitely really enjoyed this book. The Conductor is by Nicole Glover. This is a historical fantasy set in the time following the Civil War. It follows a woman who was one of the people helping people escape enslavement via the Underground Railroad, but in the process she lost her sister, and she never found out what happened to her sister afterwards, so she's still kind of trying to find that out. And I really liked this story, but I did feel like the magic system and everything magical in it was very afterthought. Under Heaven by Guy Gavriel Kay, this is basically about a bunch of political intrigue in a Chinese-inspired fantasy world. This was a really hard book to get through. I swear to God. It's actually kind of crazy because just last month I read a different one of his books that is not that different. It's also following a bunch of characters and a bunch of political intrigue in much the same way, but that one was so much easier to read and just a lot more accessible. This one, I kept forgetting who everybody was at every chapter and everything, and I was just like, dude, so I remember like nothing about this book after reading it, and it is kind of funny because I did just recently lend this to my sibling, and it took them like a couple months to actually read it, and I understand why. After reading it myself, I can totally see that. So overall, I mean, there were some really cool women in this, like in the other book of his that I read last month, and all that stuff. Like, there definitely was some character development there, but it was told in such a like info dumpy way that made it really hard to juggle what was going on and who everybody was, and this whole book just kind of went in one ear and out the other by the time I was done reading it. So I may end up having to read this again at some point, but I definitely still enjoyed it at the time that I was reading it. The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. This was a book that I really enjoyed, but I think that the main thing that kept me from loving this book was the main character, unfortunately. So the point of view character is this clerk named Helena, who's like a 19-year-old girl, and even for an adult fantasy, she was like really, really age appropriate in the most annoying way. And even though I have nothing against like age appropriate characters, she was just very annoying and had very little motivation for anything. Like, she had very little of like her own motivation until almost the end of the story. And so I just found her point of view to be a very like annoying point of view to get for the first like half of the book, and she's the one telling the story. Like, it's all through her point of view, the whole thing. And so I was kind of like, why is she the one? Like, why is this told in first person from like someone who is not really the person it's about or anything? And it was just very weird. But overall, I thought that this was a really well thought out book, but I did also find that the fact that the world of this story doesn't have magic in it, but there's one magical thing that happens in it, I thought that that was like really convenient and just weird, and I'm just not really all for that. But overall, I did really like this book, and I would like to read the rest of the series. So I'm definitely really excited to continue with the series and see where it goes from there. You Exist Too Much. This is about a queer Palestinian woman who basically just goes through a lot of awful stuff and gets into a lot of like terrible relationships and all of that. And I mean, I was really excited to read this because I thought it was going to be more about kind of being a queer Palestinian woman, but instead it was really more about like getting into a ton of really terrible relationships that you as the reader can totally tell are like really, really awful, but the main character can't tell, and that just like really freaks me out, kind of annoys me, and kind of makes me go like, ugh, I don't really want to read that. I don't know. So I liked it, but I didn't. I don't know. It was really disappointing to me, but it was not all bad. It was just not what I thought it was going to be. Voyage of the Damned. This is an arc I got from NetGalley. It comes out on August 20th. This follows a boy who lives in a fantasy world where he is one of several different families who are like blessed, like they're kind of the leaders of their individual regions, and they have an ability that gets passed down from like parent to child to blah blah blah, but and it goes to only one child each generation. So each person who has the ability passes it on to one of their children. It's not necessarily the oldest one, but it's just whoever is just deemed the most worthy, I guess, by some divine intervention, basically. And the twist here is that our main character does not actually have the blessing that his father has. His father still has the blessing, has not passed it on to him, and presumably it's because his father actually had a lot of children with a lot of random people who were not his mother. So in order to hide the fact that his father did that, he has to pretend that he has the ability, and he does not. So basically he gets on a ship with all the other people who have the blessing from each of their individual regions, and they have to go to this mountain. And one of them, arguably the most important one because she's the emperor's daughter, turns up dead. And she's clearly been murdered. And then our main character tries to find out who did it and why. And then somebody else turns up dead, and then somebody else. And so overall, this was a pretty good concept. It had some really good ideas, but I felt like the murder mystery was really its weak point. It really had nothing going for it. We were never presented with any suspects at all. Once we actually do find out who did it and everything, it all comes together really well. And the last like 15-20% of the book is actually much, much better. But the entire time they're trying to find out who did it, we're not given any kind of motivation from anybody. Like nobody seems to have done it. So it's just a whole lot of the main character and one other dude trying to find out who did it. And they just come up with, oh, it wasn't him because of this. Oh, it wasn't him because he was here at the time. All we get as far as the murder mystery is concerned is, oh, blah blah didn't do it, blah blah didn't do it, blah blah didn't do it, like it's nobody. So it's definitely really, really weird, and really gets super draggy and super boring, and just a really, really terrible murder mystery. The writing and the storytelling and the dialogue were also really, really awful. Just the entire thing is just told really terribly. So the only things I liked about it were like the concept, some of the ideas, the way that it ended, and the fact that the characters are practically all queer. But aside from that, like as a story, it just really did not hold up very well, and I was really, really disappointed. And finally, Sing Me Forgotten. This is a book that I only really read because I requested it for review on NetGalley a couple years ago, and it's obviously I did not read it at that time, so I'm just trying to catch up on some of my review e-copies that I got from NetGalley. So this is about a fantasy world that is based on olden day France. This is kind of a like loosely This is a like loose retelling of Phantom of the Opera, but gender bent, basically, and it follows this girl who has the ability to read other people's memories if they are singing, and she can take their memories if they are singing, and she also cannot forget anything herself. And the people like her are normally killed at birth, but she survived. Really, really enjoyed this book a lot more than I actually thought I was going to. I thought it was just going to be like kind of cool, but it ended up being really good. I thought that, yeah, it could have used a lot more world building. I felt like the love interest was really underdeveloped and really boring. I felt like the villain, I'm not a fan of the surprise villain trope. I'm really not. It annoys me so much. I complain about it all the time, if you haven't noticed in previous videos. But besides all of that, like some of that I can kind of forgive because this is a young adult book. But like overall, it was actually really enjoyable. It had the perfect mix of kind of conflict and like information that we get and all of that. Like it just did a really good job of being a good story overall. And I really, really liked, even though I thought that the magic system could have been better developed and better thought out, I did find it really interesting because I really like magic systems that are like memory based and all of that. And so this ended up being a really, really enjoyable read, and also my 100th read of the year. I made it to 100 books already. It normally takes me through October to get to 100 books, so it's crazy that it's only June and I got to 100 books. But anyway, so those are the books that I read in the latter half of June. Let me know if you've read any of these or have any thoughts on them, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!